of a society, right? And so I titled this presentation, The Work of Many Hands. In Montessori, we talk a lot about the work of the hand, right? The hand is the instrument of the mind. The hand is the instrument of the intelligence, Montessori tells us. And that's true all the way through human development. But when we get to adolescence, the focus shifts to the work of many hands, many people's work coordinated together to meet the needs of a group, a small community, groups that live in cities, nations, and the world itself. So this organization of many people contributing to meeting each other's needs is the work of many hands, and it needs to be organized, which human beings are amazing at doing. I'm going to share my screen with you now. Whenever I want to understand a principle of Montessori education, something that's fundamental to the development of human beings, I go back to Montessori's reason, right, for developing an approach to education. I go back to the big picture of what the point of a Montessori education is. And for Montessori, and for those of us working in Montessori, the ultimate outcome is for a better, higher functioning, more peaceful human being, cooperating, collaborating with other human beings in a way that benefits, right, everyone and benefits the planet. So understanding how we organize ourselves to do the work of being human, that's social organization. And it truly is the fundamental principle, the mechanism that prompts development for adolescents, that gets development going and leads to the mature organism of the human in adulthood. We remember that Montessori has a goal, right? She's looking for the science of humanity that will bring peace. The science of peace, as Montessori defines it in Education and Peace, her work, her lectures in that particular book. There are two components, she says, of what we need to know in order to accomplish the science of peace. The first component is that we need to support the natural development of the individual, starting with the child. If we understand natural development of the child and support that child from birth through adulthood, we have a much better chance at capable, cooperative, high-functioning human beings working in the world. The second component to the science of peace for Montessori is that we make it clear to ourselves, we make it transparent to everyone that we're interdependent on this planet, that the human community globally is interdependent on one another. We are a complex web of activity on the planet, and we need each other. We cannot do the work that we need to do by ourselves. We must do it with other human beings. So we must organize ourselves in order to do that. This is the foundation of all of Montessori education. These two principles that she talks about as the science of peace, that we are promoting and nurturing and supporting every individual child to become independent. And that doesn't mean separate from other people. Independence from a developmental point of view is about mastering your environment, using your human potential to adapt to the environment you find yourself in and become master of it, being capable yourself of taking care of what you need, of what others need, of what the environment needs. A child who experiences independence gains strength and gains knowledge and cognitive and interpersonal abilities. So to become independent of adult help is fundamental to our children being the best human beings they can be, and experiencing the social interdependence that is the nature of our human experience. Both are equally important. Both independence and interdependence are supported in Montessori environments from birth all the way through the third plane. So it should be no surprise to us that when we get to adolescence, both independent functioning and social collaboration are at the core of what adolescents need to experience. Being capable of functioning yourself as a growing young person towards adulthood, experiencing being competent as a young adult is necessary to gain the maturity that we need to gain before we get to adulthood. And experiencing how to work in our group collaboratively and make a contribution to that group is the other underlying experience that leads to competent adulthood. These two experiences are the foundation of becoming a fully capable human adult. And it isn't enough just to learn about adulthood. It isn't enough just to learn knowledge and content and skill. Adolescents need to live this experience. And so Montessori recommends components in a prepared environment, specifically for adolescents, that give them this opportunity to understand themselves what it means to participate in a socially organized community that's working to meet its own needs. I've talked about this before. If you've been at other workshops with me, you've seen me share slides like this. But what Montessori calls for in adolescence is an environment that has a complex set of activities that represent a microcosm of human society, of adult work. She calls it the Center for Study and Work because the work to meet the fundamental needs of the group is the kind of work that calls to adolescence. And the knowledge that's required to do that effectively becomes the reason to study. to seek knowledge, and to learn new skills. So when we think of an environment that's the educational environment for adolescents, we're not looking at a classroom. We are looking at a community of activities that include providing food and structures and items for sale and taking care of the natural resources of the environment, having responsibility for other living things, offering real, purposeful work that requires serious dedication, serious responsibility, managing the problems that come up, solving issues that arise in the community. It's a complex environment because adolescents need to live and experience how humans organize themselves, work collaboratively to take care of their needs. These are the components on this slide that Maria Montessori recommends to be in the environment for adolescents so they can experience and live a real sense of social organization. The residents, if they can live together with each other for periods of time, they must be organized in order to take care of themselves every day. They have to provide meals. They have to take care of the facility or the house or the place where they live. She also recommends that they have the opportunity to grow some food, to grow their own food, or to sell it to their community and experience providing for themselves and for others something so fundamental, right, as feeding yourselves. She recommends that they make products to sell, that they have a shop, a place to produce and exchange items and be involved in business-like activities. She also recommends that they have the opportunity to host other guests in their environment, to work with machines and understand how machines and tools help us to do the work we need. And it's important that in this environment, there are other adolescents and also adults with whom they can work side by side. So this list is what we call the practical considerations of social organization. What can be in the environment to make the opportunities available for adolescents? I am trying out some new ways to represent how this complex environment works. And we can think about the environment as having these layers. At the base is the physical place where the adolescents live, study, and work, the center for study and work. The activity that goes on in that place that is organized to take care of the community is the layer of social organization. It's how the group, the community, collaborates with one another to meet those needs. I think of it like a neural network of the brain. It's dynamic, it's alive, right? It's functioning organically because it involves the activity of the people in that community every day. The layer at the very top is what we call the educational syllabus, or the developmental experiences of bringing in knowledge, bringing in culture, whatever's needed to make the activity of the social organization effective. So if you can put all those layers together, they're operating as a web of activity. It's alive. It's complex. That educational syllabus, which I have spoken about before in prior workshops, is not just intellectual content, right? I say this often. It is about human culture. It is about the knowledge that humans have created over time. Knowledge that helps human beings acquire what they need, create what they need, solve the problems that come up in our lives. We need self-expression because that's the fundamental opportunity for individuals to communicate their needs and their ideas, their perspective, their potential solutions to problems, and to share one another's experience. So there is empathy, there is caring for other human beings. If we don't have free self-expression, the people who are interdependent cannot communicate their needs to one another. Self-expression is fundamental to human activity. The layer that Montessori calls psychic development includes our mathematical thinking, our various language capacities, and our ability to be aware of the impact of our actions on other people. We have to develop those capacities. Montessori considers them the psychic abilities that humans are born with, and they lead to a moral awareness of one another. So we want to refine our mathematical thinking, our language abilities, and our understanding of the human dynamics of our group in order to work better as a social organization. And the last category, all of the human culture that we receive over time to the present day, is there for us as a gift of knowledge, a gift of skill, so that we can operate in our interdependent web effectively. So we're not learning content just for content's sake. It is the gift to us to help our activity in our community work effectively and work for the benefit of everyone. And the most important piece of this for adolescent development is that they have the opportunity to live this integration of study and work. So they understand why knowledge is necessary for the work that needs to be done. I have been thinking more often about how parallel the experience of adolescence is to the experience of young children. When we work with young children in Montessori, And they have these beautiful materials that help them to refine their cognition, their senses, their mastery of their environment. When we present the materials to young children, we don't present them and then say, oh, let me do that for you. I can do it better. Let me take those cylinders out for you. Let me put them back for you. The whole point is that the child does that work themselves. So depriving the child of their own exploration, of their own activity, would be depriving them of the education and the independence we intend for them. So depriving adolescents of living social organization is like depriving the young child of the material itself. We wouldn't take it away from them. So we need to remember that engagement in working in the community to provide the community's needs, to solve the community's problems, to take care of the physical life and the cultural life of the community is what adolescents need to experience on a concrete level with their senses, with their bodies, with their minds, with their hearts, with their whole being. They need to live this belonging and this contribution. By simply giving them academic knowledge, we're depriving them of the life of their own development. Their prime motivation, their strong internal fundamental drive is to belong and contribute. We see it in them all the time. So much of what they are concerned about day to day is how they are belonging or not belonging to the group. And giving them opportunity to make contributions to the functioning of the group reaches something very deep and fundamental in an adolescent. They experience this cycle of contribution if they're in an environment that is prepared specifically for them to be part of a genuine social organization. They have the opportunity to take on a role in the community, to acquire knowledge and expertise to fulfill that role, to do that task. When they're able to accomplish a task, to do the work, and have the opportunity to acquire skill by repeating parts of the activity and varying that, when they make a contribution, that contribution can be recognized by the community. If it's real and purposeful, no one has to say, oh, you made a great contribution. The community will see because they will experience. They will experience the structure that was built. They will experience the problem that was solved. They will experience the meal that was grown, prepared, and served. They will experience the learning moment that happens when an adolescent can share their knowledge their perspective with the group. When that happens, what they experience is what we call valorization. I have value. I've made a contribution. My work has led to something of value. That is what it leads to a sense of belonging and to the desire to go through the cycle again and again and again. And it's spiraling through this kind of contribution cycle that strengthens the individual. Montessori talks about how strong it can make an adolescent, how confidence is an important result of their contribution, of their work. And none of this would make any sense if there weren't a social organization that they are contributing to. Giving them that opportunity to make a contribution in a social organization does not happen if we keep them sitting in desks, receiving information. It does not look like this. It looks like this. It looks like life. Life with real problems to solve. Life with challenges to overcome. Activities in life that bring people together, so they must work things out, where skills can be applied, ideas can be shared, failures can happen, because failure is necessary to learn. It looks hard. It's a work that involves the body as well as the mind. Yes, the hands, still the hands. It's work of togetherness. It's work in solitude. It's work that reaches out beyond the school community to the public, to the people who will buy your products, for whom you can offer services. It is surprising how often Dr. Montessori talks about social organization, the forming of an organized society in her writing. Until you start looking for it, you're not aware how fundamental it is in so much of what she writes. I'm just going to give you a few examples. There are about 22 places in Education and Peace where she talks about social organization. The environment must promote not only the freedom of the individual, but also the formation of a society. She tells us that formation has to happen in the environment prepared for adolescence. It has to be experienced there. She also says, the second level of education leads to society, to the social organization of the adult. Secondary school should be the gateway to a development of personality and social organization. Montessori, personality means all the potential that we are born with because we're human beings, because we have psychic capabilities to use our minds to create, to adapt. So school at the secondary level should be the gateway to continuing that development of those capacities and in a social organization. She says, in From Childhood to Adolescence, vital energies consist in the sense of one's true value and in the knowledge of the possibility of participating in a social organization. They are not required only by memorizing lessons or by resolving problems having nothing to do with practical life. Life must be the focal point, and education the means. Resolving real problems in a real community setting. That is what it means to participate in true social development. Montessori is always focused on and interested in what is the nature of human beings as a species. What's fundamental about who we are and how we are put together. We do not operate as islands. We are not distinct and individual creatures who have nothing to do with each other. We never operate in isolation. We can't. We would not survive. It is not who we are. Our vital energies are dedicated to exploring the environment we're in and collaborating with other human beings so we can survive and thrive together. We are social creatures, and the number one thing we do is adapt to our environment. All of education for Montessori is geared towards our adaptability, our unfolding capacity to explore our environment, master it, and modify it in order to meet our needs. When we think of the young child, as soon as they can move any part of their body, they are exploring everything in their environment so they can master it. They are driven to adapt to the environment they find themselves in. That drive to adapt continues in us. In fact, Montessori considers adaptability as the most important outcome of development. We build supranature. Montessori uses this term of the structures that are built on top of the natural world, using the natural world. We are cautious in our time about what impact that supranature has had on the planet, as we should be. But it is still fundamentally our nature as a species to modify the natural environment. We have this intelligence. We have this ability to imagine and create. We can evolve in our own lifetime by adapting the environment around us and creating a superstructure to meet our needs. Montessori did not see this as fundamentally a bad thing. It is who we are. We cannot take ourselves out of that inclination to build supranature. She does, however, talk about the need for parallel moral development to match our supernature so that we are aware of the consequences. We're aware of the impact of building supranature. We organize our environment. We categorize. We put things in order in a way that helps us to do our work. We organize our day, our calendar, our concept of time, our concept of social structure. Our brains are natural ordering machines. Organization is what we do. Our prefrontal cortex is executive functioning. It's being able to analyze the organization around us and operate in that organization, make it more effective. Things Montessori talks about is that the work of the adult is not the same as the work of the child. The work of the adult is very efficient. We aim for efficiency and speed and accuracy. The child and the adolescent, on the other hand, their work is to develop themselves. Their drive is to fulfill their unfolding capacities to function and master the environment. They are less concerned about what's efficient. The adolescent, however, is on this bridge between childhood and adulthood. So like the child, they are still focused on constructing themselves. And often they will be inefficient in ways that adults don't understand. Often they will prioritize socializing with each other in ways that look like they are distracted from work. Montessori even talks about the young adolescent as experiencing a period of the intellect stepping back for a while. It diminishes somewhat. That's not because they are not developing cognitive ability. They are. But their focus shifts to how the social group is functioning. They're wired that way. Evolution has made them that way. While the adults are prioritizing efficient outcomes of adult-like work. The adolescent is focused on their need to belong and contribute. So we have to remember that the work of the adult can look different from the work of the adolescent. Yet they are interested in doing work that has an impact for their community. They're interested in working with their peers, with each other, to accomplish things. They will organize themselves in order to accomplish work. We just have to remember their focus is on the social relationship more often than the actual outcome of a task sometimes. But what we do know about adolescents is that they must experience the outcome of this work on supranature in a way that they can concretely see it, feel it, understand it in the world. We can ask them to think abstractly about work and about the outcomes of work, but they will be most engaged when that work has concrete impact. They can see the results of what they have done. They have built a wall, a fence, a structure. They have grown and preserved or served their own food and then eaten it. They have planted plants that grow and are harvested. They have helped to care for a sick animal on the farm and helped it to be better. They have produced a dramatic performance for the community with costumes and stage setting and an audience that has received their production. They have used tools in the wood shop to carve wooden spoons or utensils, or made cutting boards or small pieces of furniture. And they have sold those items to a public audience who has paid money for them. They have designed tools or machines that produce artistic results. They have made photographs. They have designed maps or three-dimensional structures. They need concrete results in their lives. I'm at the end of my first presentation, but I'll make a few more comments, perhaps before we take a break. I think one of the greatest challenges in working with teachers to adopt a Montessori perspective for the adolescent level is to truly understand that the experience adolescents need is more about acting in the community than it is about abstract knowledge that's acquired. our cultures, your culture, our culture, has for such a long time emphasized just knowledge, just abstract knowledge, and information, acquiring information that's given to them. And what Montessori is suggesting is that we will find a more deeply engaged human being if knowledge is being acquired for purpose, for usefulness, for work that has impact on the world. There are other researchers who have written about adolescence as such a long period that the modern world has artificially created, this long time in life before a human being can truly have a role in society. They have to wait and study and study and study for years before they see themselves as an actor in society that has purpose, but that we're actually designed to want to belong and contribute in early adolescence. We long for a contribution to make. It is part of how we shape identity. It's part of how we create a sense of value for ourselves. And even though adolescents cannot accomplish the sophisticated work that adults can, they can contribute concretely in small ways. They can apply knowledge, gain skill, and belong to their communities in a way that they're valued from a very young age. That experience helps to build independence and helps to make transparent that we are all contributors. We're all part of an interdependent web of human activity. That is something that needs to be built over time, right? That awareness, that value, that engagement. And I think we find that when adolescents have those opportunities, their motivation is higher. They will choose work. They will ask for challenge rather than wait for it to be imposed on them.
那第一个问题呢，就是这个提问者他是说，可能因为他还不够清楚，他听到很多让青少年亲自工作体验生活经问，那他想要请问，所谓的学科知识会放在蒙特梭利中学教育的哪里？那是让青少年自己去找资料学习的意思吗？还是说也会有一些授课内容？那我们请 Laurie 可以来回应一下这位这个参与者的提问。
So the slide that I showed giving the educational syllabus and is a representative of Montessori's look at the disciplines. And she saw course, the disciplines are important, but for slightly different reasons than we would talk about in traditional education. She sees the capacities of human beings, particularly mathematical thinking and language use, as capacities we're born with. They're natural to us. They're already in us, but they need to be nurtured and invited to be used, to unfold, to grow and be refined. And you invite children into development of mathematical thinking and linguistic ability based on their stage of development. Yes, we offer lessons in math. We offer lessons in the refinement of language use, which adolescents already have well developed in them. But you will engage them most fully when those are related to other purposeful work that they are doing. So, yes, we are offering invitations to those capacities all along, regularly, and connecting mathematical thinking to the work they do in their community. Any structure that you build involves mathematical precision. Any data collection on what's happening in the environment where you are growing things or you're preserving nature has scientific data that you collect and analyze, and results often in equations that are algebraic in nature. Part of our job is to see how to connect the adolescent to the knowledge of the disciplines in ways that show them the real value that those disciplines have. Learn about history because what's happened before us helps to inform how to solve the problems of our time. We look at laws, we look at cultural history, we look at why people have migrated around the world. We look at economics and how that impacts people's lives as we are sorting out the problems and issues of our own community. So it's making those connections. That's part of our job. Before I get started with the second half, thinking about that question that everyone always asks, so do we still teach them? Do we still give lessons? Is there a place for the disciplines? Again, this is the hardest shift of thinking that has to happen in order to do Montessori education. Yes, knowledge is important. Yes, skills are important. The question for an adolescent is always, why? How? This. How can I do something with this? It's why if you can keep in mind the two aspects of Montessori philosophy, independence, independent mastery is important for the individual, and involvement in the interdependent social contribution is also important. They need both. You are not pushing away knowledge or avoiding it. You're looking at how the two can often come together. I was primarily a writing teacher, a language, literature, and writing teacher. And what I know is that an adolescent wants to work on the skills of language expression most when what they're writing has a purpose for them, has a purpose and an audience in their community. And there's a lot of sophisticated skill one can learn as a writer. And we want to introduce sophisticated skill. But it will be best achieved if the writer has a purpose and an audience for their work, when they know why they're writing. And that's true in every discipline. Understanding the purpose of the knowledge and the skill, wanting to get better at it, wanting to master it, because they have a purpose to do so, because there's value in that. Younger adolescent in particular, the 12 to 15-year-old, is more concerned about why they should do this work than the older adolescent is, for a couple of reasons. They're just entering the stage of belonging and social contribution, and their focus is more social than it is on sophisticated content. As the brain develops into older adolescence, the ability to manipulate abstract information becomes more available, right, to that 16, 17, 18-year-old. And their ability to look beyond into the future becomes more of a concern. So it's important to remember that what motivates the 13-year-old is different from what motivates the 17-year-old. And their cognition is greater. Their neural networks are more well developed. So knowledge and its value is something the older adolescent can better understand. So I hope that helps answer that previous question. And we'll get back to this. I want to speak a little bit more about Montessori's world perspective, her view of our human nature. And her perspective was that all of humanity is connected in a complex web of interrelationships. In fact, she saw everything in the universe as being connected and interrelated. So this principle of interdependency governs a good deal of the theory behind Montessori education as a support for human development. For the 6 to 12-year-old, Montessori emphasized being aware that everyone has a task, a role to play, a cosmic task. Every entity on the planet has a cosmic task, a place in the interrelated web of life on the planet. Something that should develop in that 6 to 12-year-old is a sense of wonder, a sense of gratitude for all the gifts that we receive, because so many other creatures provide for us in ways they don't realize. All the food that we eat, the oxygen in our atmosphere, the soil that's a result of erosion over time, so we can grow plants in it. Everything in the world has a place, and we are gifted with their contributions. So that 6 to 12-year-old develops a sense of gratitude. Amazing. It's amazing that we are gifted in so many ways with all the creatures who've lived on the planet in the past. All of the people that have made discoveries, that created language, that built beautiful architecture, that made art. All of the people in our past have created this human culture that we inherit as a gift. So when we get to adolescence, there is a desire to participate in the creation of those gifts. An adolescent wants to make use of the natural resources, the tools of the environment, to create their own contributions, to be part of that interdependency that we're aware of in our past and now in our present. Montessori actually talks about humanity as a single organism on the planet, that we are already a united, complex web of life, a single organism, because we depend on other people and other people's gifts to our lives. We depend on the collaboration of other human beings for us to have our everyday life. Oh. Lost the ability to move forward. Oh. One moment. Someone asked to annotate and I said yes, and now I can only annotate. I can't move forward. Hang on, let's see what I can do. I'm going to stop and share again. Okay. There we go. Just two examples of what Montessori talks about so often in her work, that we are so globally interrelated, right? I mean, this is a chart of where different foods from around the world originate. And that national diets originally, right, the food we all eat often comes from other places in the world. This trend has speeded up, accelerated in the past 50 years. So that much of the food that I eat in my meals might come from places very far away. And in fact, few of us could feed our own families without the gift of food that other people grow or care for and produce and send to us. We've lost the ability to feed ourselves and our families completely on our own or in our small villages or communities. We would have to work hard to regain that capacity. Some of us can, but most of us depend on the gift of food from people we'll never see. And that's a global interdependency that we should be aware of and grateful for and happy to participate in. In the same way, this is a chart about the United States, because it's the one I could find. And it shows different places in the world where I and the people in my country get their clothing. That clothing is often made by people very far away from us. And we import that clothing. And we'll never see those people who have put their time and effort into making all the beautiful things we have available to wear as clothes. These are lessons that we give the children in the 6 to 12 environment, but they're also things that adolescents need to be aware of and are interested in more detailed ways than the young child is. They're interested in the economic result of that. They're interested in the kinds of laws that govern who makes clothing and what are the conditions of the workers who make the clothing. If adolescents become aware of injustices in the conditions of those workers, they are ready to do the work, to express their consideration, their concern about the conditions that people are working under. They are interested in how humans are organizing the work of the world and what impact that has on them and on other people. So we experience this interrelationship every day, and it is one of the avenues of interest that adolescents have about their own lives. They are interested in how they are personally affected by the social organization of the world. Montessori talks about how we are a human unity, that we have reached a stage in our social organization that makes it impossible to live in nature. Of necessity, each and every one of us depends on the work of others and is obliged to work for others. adolescents who experience providing fundamental needs for their community, growing some of their own food, building their own structures, even making some of their own clothing, but also making art for each other, building machines and using tools. They experience that firsthand themselves, and the kind of work and the kind of labor that it takes to do that work. They will then have a greater understanding of what the other people in the world are doing and how much work it requires, how much value it has, how that fits into an economic system that requires that we pay for things, and where that money goes, to whom it goes, how many levels of economic structure does that money filter through before it gets to the laborer who actually created the item. Real experience in these areas informs the adolescent who's interested in how these things work and what the moral impact is of this activity. And Montessori tells us that adolescents must experience this themselves, the way that humans organize themselves to meet human needs. This is what social organization is and what it does for developing the adolescent towards adulthood. It's why experiencing social organization is the mechanism that prompts adolescence toward adulthood. It's concerning, I think, to those of us who work in Montessori that our culture is giving our adolescents less and less concrete experience and more experience on screens, right? That's removed from the concrete experience of the world. It's not to say that technology or our digital world is bad, but there is a way in which it is increasingly removing our young people from the actual work in the world. And they need that experience to inform them of how human beings function. We're still three-dimensional beings. We still depend on a concrete, natural world for its resources. But if you never have contact with that, it is impossible to understand social organization required for human beings to keep themselves alive and thriving on the planet. Montessori says to act in association with others, either in thought or in practice, is the only way in which the human nature can be active. We are social creatures. We must work with other humans in collaboration. It's the only way we activate our humanity. If our young people are increasingly isolated from that interaction, they're removing themselves and we're removing them from their fundamental human nature, according to Montessori. If we remember that the goal of education is not necessarily a particular achievement of a particular profession, but to develop a human being to their fullest capacity to reach adulthood with a sense of maturity in every aspect of being human, that helps us understand why adolescents need concrete experience in human community. These are some of the aspects of maturing into adulthood: to experience financial independence, to understand what it means to participate in a financial system, to provide for your needs and the needs of others through production and exchange, and the exchange of money and the value of money and products, and knowing how that system works. That's an important aspect of becoming an adult. Being socially independent, being able to function as a person who knows how to get along with other people, how to have relationships, how to navigate differences in social perspective, to gain confidence in your own sense of identity, in your ability to articulate your needs. That's what it means to be socially independent, to master that. Developmental psychologists tell us that forming identity is a crucial aspect of adolescence. And identity has many different pieces to it. We have different ways of establishing a sense of who we are. Some of it's cultural, some of it's political, some of it's religious, or relates to gender, or relates to vision and goals for one's life. Acquiring a value system and establishing a strong sense of identity is a marker for health and well-being in adolescence and into adulthood. Our identities may change, we may shift our value system over time, but it is important that adolescents have a developed sense of identity and value as they reach ages of adulthood. Being able to have healthy relationships is another marker of healthy adulthood. To have freedom, to make choices, to have agency over your own life, to be able to govern your path, your future, but also knowing that there's responsibility attached to all of those choices. Responsibility is attached to freedom. Freedom doesn't occur without impact on those around you and on yourself. So being able to balance freedom with responsibility is another aspect of maturity. And if you are familiar with Montessori education, you know that freedom is accompanied by responsibility all the way through development, from very early. In a young child from 0 to 3, a 3 to 6-year-old, 6 to 12-year-old, and then in adolescence, children are offered choices and freedom and agency over their own decision making, but it's always accompanied by limits and responsibility to others. We know that getting to adulthood requires the capacity to think critically. That means being able to weigh information that you're receiving, evaluate a situation, to analyze and make judgment in a way that decision-making is effective. That takes development all the way through childhood and adolescence. And we know that the brain has to develop in parallel to the activity of decision-making. So the oldest adolescents will have greater capacity for logical thinking than a younger adolescent does. And executive functioning, the ability to organize oneself, prioritize goals, make plans, and follow through on those plans. These are all the achievements that a human being works toward in order to reach fully mature adulthood. And all of these activities have to be available for exploration and practice in an environment where adolescents are growing. And then the adolescents need to have some experience of how the world beyond them is functioning, how it works. They're primarily interested, right, in a role that they can have in their society. So first, they experience that in their local group, but then they also want to understand how the world is organized beyond them in the greater society. So beginning to connect them with people and organizations and systems that are outside of the school community is important, so they can have experiences in what people do to make their contribution to society and how that works with other people who are offering different contributions. So part of what we do is connect them to people and organizations in the broader culture, to bring those people in to offer lessons or discussion or be a model or give examples or show adolescents how this work happens in the world. If we go back to the chart of activities that can happen in the school community as a social organization, and we simply extend that work to the broader community and consider all of the people and places and organizations that provide a professional example of how the broader society works. So if they are creating items in the wood shop or the workshop to sell, they can also be connecting with the retail shops in their community and learning how those businesses are run. They can be connected with other craftspeople and artists who are creating objects to sell to the community and learn about that process and what it requires to have a product that people will buy. They can be exposed to factories and manufacturers of items. And again, they are simply exploring concretely how people and adults in the world operate a social organization in a way that they can learn and apply for themselves. And you can take any area of activity and extend into the broader community to learn from experts and people who do this work for a living. If we're growing food in the garden, we can explore the local food industry and what impact it has on people's lives. We could learn from soil scientists about our soil and what it needs. We can connect with local restaurants. I work with programs where the garden produce that the students grow is sold to local restaurants or local shops to sell or to be served, right, in well-cooked food. So they need to experience for themselves and their communities, and then they need to be connected with people and adults in the broader community as well. We bring specialists in to work with the adolescents. Yes, we can give them lessons and we will coach them and support their skill building and their knowledge acquisition. But to bring a specialist in to help them with a particular task, a challenge that they have taken on, something that they're doing for the community, and to learn from those specialists gives them an opportunity to know other adults and see what other adults can bring as gifts, right, to the world. And so when you have land, when you have a farm, when you have gardens, you bring in agricultural specialists to help them learn about how to more effectively produce what they're producing or change or modify the environment and the land around them. You bring in people with technical ability in writing and editing, people who write for a living, poets, technical writers, to give them lessons and expose them to the adult professional world of writing and editing. You bring in historians, people who have lived history and can share that history with them. Connect them with researchers if they are researching a particular piece of legislation, laws that are being passed. You connect them with a specialist who knows about that law or about government. You connect them with business owners to learn how those business owners are operating their businesses, what their challenges are, what skills they've had to learn, where their successes are, and what they attribute those successes to. One of the most valuable activities for adolescents is to be able to present their own work, their own projects, their research to specialists from the outside world and get feedback from them. Teachers can help them gain knowledge and skill. But to be able to show someone whose work in the world is professional work in the area they have been working on raises their level of engagement, their seriousness, raises the quality of what they will do because they want their work to be seen as good, as high quality. And when you connect them with someone who does that work, there's value in that connection and in sharing the work that they're doing. The photographs I'm showing you are all situations where students are taking their work to professionals or they're getting input from them. Connecting with scientists, we have environmental scientists who can help us understand what's happening to our landscape, climate scientists who are able to communicate engineering practices. If we're adding water structures or new plumbing or a new waste treatment system at the school, understanding the science behind those things by bringing in the specialists and connecting with them. Engineers, designers, machinists, human rights activists. One of these photographs is actually a specialist from a civil liberties organization, helping the students to figure out whether the proposals they're making would be violating any laws, any civil rights protections for people. To check with lawyers, attorneys, law enforcement specialists, immigration attorneys. They're all projects that I have been witness to, where adolescents were tackling issues in the world that were important to them. Some are immigration issues, the ownership of guns, which is, as you know, in the United States, a significant issue right now. And bringing in people who have experience. These were law enforcement and FBI agents that came to talk to the students about their experiences. And in the lower photograph, they were studying current immigration challenges that the United States has and talking to attorneys who represent immigrants who are coming into the United States and suggesting the kinds of laws that they were proposing to the US government. These specialists come in not to grade their work, but to provide perspective and an idea of the standards of work that adults must attain in the world. All of this work, Montessori will tell us and reminds us in her writing, is connected to being and becoming a moral human being. Because interdependency is this web of relationships, and adolescents are driven to participate in it, they come face to face with the moral implications of acting in the world, realizing that their activity always has consequences. Their contributions can be positive or they can impact people in a negative way. For Montessori, morality is this interaction with other people in a way that you're conscious of the effect. And it happens all throughout development. If children are given the freedom to make choices from a very young age, their choices will have impact on others around them. And they will inevitably experience when that impact is hurtful. And they will have to consider their response to that impact. A 3-year-old experiences the effect of their actions on others. And the freedom to assert their own will, to make their own choices, is an important development in them as they come to understand that assertion affects other people. It takes a long time for moral awareness to develop. But one of the gifts of a Montessori environment is that interaction is allowed, is encouraged, is a normal part of day-to-day life. So dealing with the impact of interaction happens every day in a developmentally supported way for children who are in environments prepared for them in this way. We go back for a moment to the goals for the third plane. The third plane is the 12 to 18 plane. And as I've been saying, one of those goals is to be economically and socially independent. Another of those goals is to experience our human interdependence, and then to participate effectively in the social organization of activity, which is serving the community. The natural outcome is that you develop awareness, you develop compassion, empathy, moral awareness, what we might call moral muscle, moral strength. Montessori talks about how you can't get to a society that has moral strength if you don't first have strong, independent individuals. Individuals have to have mastered their environment and themselves in a way that they have confidence, that they have identity, that they have cognitive intelligence about how the world works. When you have strong, capable, independent individuals, they have the capacity for moral strength. So the two are always related: strong independence, moral interdependence. Montessori's ultimate goal was to have a more morally founded, interrelated humanity. And she posits, right? She suggests that the path to that moral strength is to support the independence of the child. In Education and Peace, Montessori says, a new form of morality must accompany this new form of civilization. Order and discipline must be aimed at the attainment of human harmony. And any act that hinders the establishment of a genuine community of all mankind must be regarded as immoral and a threat to the life of society. Special province of morality is the relation between individuals, and it is the very basis of social life. When you see how strongly she states the need to consider how development leads to moral interaction, you understand why she champions the idea that children will be engaged in social life, that adolescents will be immersed in social organization, because living that way is the only route to developing moral awareness and moral capacity. Anything that hinders the experience of a genuine community is regarded as a threat. If we are not providing the experience of genuine community for our children, particularly for adolescents, we are not allowing their full capacity to become moral creatures. Morality must be regarded as the science of organizing a society of men whose highest value is their selfhood and not the efficiency of their machines. Men must learn how to participate consciously in the social discipline that orders all their functions within society, and how to help keep these functions in balance. She really felt that understanding the interdependence that humans have was a scientific view of the value of human life. This is the science of peace, looking at how humans organize themselves. And interestingly enough, she's writing in the 1930s, right, and 40s, that the focus should not be on the efficiency of our machines, but on the conscious participation in how social organization works. Now, Montessori was not against machines. She was not against technology. She was not against advancement in science and technology. In fact, she felt it was a wondrous thing to be able to appreciate where science and technology have served human beings. She talks about how it's not the science itself, it's not the technology that's problematic. It's our lack of moral awareness in how we use those things. in how we use our technology that is problematic. It's our lack of moral awareness in our connectedness to other people on the planet. That's the problem. We don't see how interrelated we are. We don't see and acknowledge how dependent we are on other people all over the world. She bemoaned a world that was threatened by the destructiveness of 2 world wars. She experienced it directly herself. And she was looking for the clearest scientific approach to making sure what's natural moral possibility in human beings could be the dominant outcome of education, could be the dominant force in society. She warns against using machines as slaves, a way to distance ourselves from destructive work in the world. And it's not the machine and it's not the science. It is the lack of human moral awareness that led to world wars. And she saw the miraculous development in young children of the capacity to unfold potential no one had seen before. That they had an inner drive to construct these amazing capacities that we're born with as human beings. And somehow we cap, we limit, or we distort these capacities by not supporting the development of children. She witnessed natural social cohesion among children, the drive to organize and collaborate among children and adolescents. And she felt that by supporting what's inside us as human beings, freeing child, freeing the adolescent to develop those capacities, that would result in a more effective, a more peaceful social organization in the world. How to help keep these functions in balance. So how do we do that? How do we provide the environment where that can happen, particularly with adolescents, right? We have to live and act within our own community, within community that has a functional, evolving, and transparent social organization. It has to be transparent to us as adults, how to be more effective in the way we organize and collaborate. And then we have to bring adolescents into that social organization that is consciously considered, where moral awareness is part of the consciousness of how we're functioning together as a group. So we have to be able to analyze and understand how the adults are creating community, how the adults are organizing themselves and structuring themselves. Because the adults in a community, in a school community, right, they have their own dynamic. They bring different proficiencies and they have gaps in their own development. So to be aware of how the adults are cooperating and consciously committing to being a better, more effective organization of adults is part of preparing the environment. Because only then can we invite adolescents to work with us, to work side by side, to be part of the community and make contributions. They are not going to know how to do this on their own. They need adults who will model, need adults who will help them be aware of knowledge, of skill, and of human interrelationships, of the kind of respect that's needed for a community to function. This is probably the hardest part of the work in an adolescent community, is getting the adults to consciously become aware of how they are functioning together, how their relationship is effective or not. Adults like to be experts, and they like to be experts in their own area, and it's easier to do that separately from everybody else. But if that's the kind of environment we create, where the adults are separated and being their own island with adolescents, we're failing to create the social organization those adolescents need to experience. We have to work with each other and then be willing to let the adolescents do whatever work they're capable of to provide for their independence. It's complex work. We have to envision the way we think about the social organization structure. What we're creating for adolescents as, this is Montessori's term, it needs to be a school of experience in the elements of social life, which includes the basic components of any society or any civilization. How many different ways can we provide experience in the elements of a social group providing for itself? A school of experience in the elements of social life. Then we have to grow our own awareness of the way in which we are creating, or we're not creating, we're failing to create opportunities for adolescents to find meaningful work that contributes to this social organization. What can they do that gives them a role, that gives them responsibility, that gives them a chance to contribute, to create, to design, to solve the problem, and to cooperate with others in the process? How many ways can we offer those experiences in our communities, knowing that knowledge is needed to make those contributions? Skills are needed. And I want to talk just briefly about this idea of valorization. Montessori talks quite a lot about valorization, not just in adolescence, but all the way through development. And what it means is the individual who is able to master their environment and adapt successfully to it will feel confident, will feel that they belong, and will be strengthened by that mastery. A young child experiences valorization when they master the activities in their environment and they feel like they belong to it and make a contribution to it. So valorization is necessary at all ages. It's a deeply experienced usefulness. It's a match between your competence, your capability, and what the environment requires you to do. It's not something people can give to you. You can't tell people to be valorized. They have to experience it through their own activity, their own mastery, their choices, the tasks they accomplish. And the more often they can experience it, the more adapted they feel and the stronger they feel. It requires work that is appropriate to the stage of development they're in. It requires that they have opportunity and the right tools and the right set of skills to match the challenge. It requires the right amount of support, just enough, just sufficient support for them to be successful on their own. Just like we cannot put the cylinder blocks in the box for the young child, we cannot do the work for the child or for the adolescent, but we can arrange it so the steps they need to go through lead them to success and independence on their own. And the more they can do that because the environment provides it, more independent they'll feel from the adult. Valorization, deeply experienced usefulness, is important to all human beings. We find in current research that at the root of dysfunction, at the root of mental health issues like depression, there is a disconnect of the individual from purpose, a disconnect from meaningful contribution, or a disconnect from meaningful relationship. I find it so inspirational and interesting that the things that a Montessori environment is designed to provide are the antidotes to mental health issues in many cases, because a Montessori environment supports connection with other people, meaningful work, purpose, contribution, the freedom to express your needs, the freedom to express your ideas and your perspective. Adaptation is the final outcome. And there's power in adaptation. There's strength in the ability to adapt to the environment. Montessori says, for success in life depends in every case on self-confidence and the knowledge of one's own capacity and many-sided powers of adaptation. The consciousness of knowing how to make oneself useful, how to help mankind in many ways, fills the soul with noble confidence, with almost religious dignity. Everything that I have been talking about, right, is sort of summarized in this particular quote. How to be useful and having the independent skill and strength is so important. It is almost like religious dignity. It's that significant to the human experience. So our job is to provide the environment that allows this to happen. Confidence, usefulness, independent mastery, these are not just side benefits to education. They're the point of education for Montessori. So we must provide the conditions for purposeful work in a social context. All of us in our lives, we need to achieve independence. We need to establish that we belong, and we need to contribute. That's at the base of our human experience. So you can see why Montessori creates this as the container, as the place, as the environment adolescents in particular need to experience. How do they get to fully developed, mature adulthood if they cannot have these experiences all along? In working with a school recently, I'll say that in a minute, take that back. This quote is pretty powerful from Montessori. The school which gives only academics, which separates intelligence from practical society, is no longer valid. The school itself is not the goal, and learning for learning's sake is torture, but rather that learning has a practical application, that it can unite and nourish life. It then suddenly becomes a brilliant and living thing. recently, in working with a school that is trying to figure out how to present what their product is, right? What's the product of a Montessori education? Because our cultures think in terms of products, right? And of marketing those products. I talked to them about the product being a person's state of being, of what an adolescent experiences about themselves, rather than the product being a test score or an academic award or an entrance into a particular university. The product is the internal awareness of a human being. And here are some of the statements that I put together for what an adolescent going through a Montessori community experience might be thinking about themselves. They would be thinking that I matter. I have value. I am known. I'm understood. My voice is heard. My perspective is considered. My contribution has value. I have responsibility. I have choice, and I make choices. My work has purpose. My work has impact. I study because there is work to be done in the world, and knowledge will help. I seek expertise from those who have it. I collaborate to get the work done. I care about people. I am grateful for their contributions. Together, we care about what happens in the world. And as an outcome, you want the adolescents to be able to say, I feel strong. I feel confident. I am ready and anticipate taking on important work. I'm ready to make a difference, to create something new. The product is an internal life that has strength and readiness for the adult world. So this environment, which we are tasked with preparing, should promote not only the freedom of the individual, but also the formation of a society. Which takes us back to Montessori's science of peace. There are two components to the science of peace. One is to support the development of the individual, the child, and the adolescent. And the other component is to make interdependency transparent, to make it clear that we are interdependent on one another. We need each other. We are a complex, connected organism on the planet. And we can be a collaborative interdependency. And education can do this. An education that sees this as the outcome can make this happen. That was Montessori's claim. So now we have time for more questions.
好，那我们现在的话呢，就是会进入到刚才已经有些人提问，那我们会继续的来把刚才的问题来提出来。那我们一样会先由大家比较感兴趣的问题先来发问。好，那想请问郑老师现在有需要讲话吗？
不用，大家先询。
好，那我们就最后再帮我们做一个结尾。那首先的话呢，第一个问题是，想请问青少年的学习、工作发源与他们的生活环境，那这个环境呢，会只限于当下的生活情境，例如校园、社区，还是会扩展到更大的范围，像是国家、民族、世界环境议题呢？
I think there are a series of circles that we're operating in. And the young adolescent is going to be focused on the first circle, their immediate peer group, their immediate community. And if you work with young adolescents, you know this is true. Their interest is in their peer group and their identity in that peer group. That's normal. So that community, that first circle, is our local school community. As they get older, they are looking out beyond to the greater community, and they are capable of both having some experiences in the broader community, literal, concrete experiences with people they can meet face to face. And they're also able to think about connections to the more global community. We want to respect the need for the personal impact they can have on their local community. It's very important as part of development, but they can be intellectually connecting with the global community. But that's a 6-year period or longer, right? The next plane of development, 18 to 24, Montessori talks about, is the place where the young adult begins making specific decisions about the kind of work they can do in the broader world. But if they've had experiences all along, locally, a little bit further out, their awareness and their confidence is going to be higher when they're ready to commit to work as a young adult.
好，那我们来进入第二题。第二题是，有人想要知道说，Laurie 曾经使用了哪一些的方式来打动，或者是说吸引青少年进行一个探索。 那提问的这个人他提到说，因为他在教育现场，常看到青少年只做他们想做的事情，而停止了接触新事物的机会，所以想要请教一下 Laurie。
I think you have to be a bit of an artist. I think there is an art to inviting adolescents to work that is important, to present them with a challenge, a problem to solve that they need to solve, that's right in front of them. And they may be hesitant at first, but if the adult truly communicates the value of solving this problem to their local community, they will come on board. They also are inclined to do what their peers want to do. So part of what you do is allow for the group of peers to work together on it. And often they will transition from, I'm doing this because my friends are doing it, to, oh, I'm doing this because little by little, I'm seeing the contribution I can make. We have to be patient with the journey of invitation to adolescence. And in my experience, the more the culture of the school community has purposeful work happening in a variety of ways that everyone can see, the more it invites adolescents in as simply, this is what we do. This is who we are. We do this kind of work, and there's work over here that is growing food and serving food, and there's work over here that is solving a pollution problem. And there's work over here that's establishing governance structure for how we're going to make decisions. And there's work over here that's producing creative writing that will be published in the community. Culture also governs how adolescents engage. It takes a while to develop a culture of purposeful work as who we are as a community. But once you have that culture, adolescents who are joining the community simply follow it because it's what everyone else is doing. So if you don't have that culture, you have to work hard to create it. And the adults have to be kind, respectful, but firm and serious about the work and how important it is. Also, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say one more thing. I have to say that in a community where there's daily work that must be done, even if you don't want to do it, where you are maintaining the environment, you're cleaning it, you're fixing what's broken, you are feeding animals, you are tending the garden, none of which as a labor is exciting, but because it's what we all do and we all take our turn and it's part of everyday activity, that's a building of culture based on responsibility to one another. You're cooking lunch today. You're cleaning up after the meal today. It's your job today to take care of this piece of our life here. It's just what we do.
好，我们感谢 Laurie 的回应。那我们现在来继续下一题。那下一题的部分是有一个老师他说，有些孩子在学习的过程中受过伤，目前是选择拒绝跟人群有互动，那甚至是简居。虽然我们透过各种的活动邀请，但是孩子还是选择不跟外界互动。那想请问 Laurie 对于跟这类的孩子互动有什么比较好的切入点吗？
That's a hard question to answer because I think every individual is a different case, right? I think coming to understand that particular individual and observing carefully to see what kinds of things they will engage in and respectfully offering different opportunities for that engagement when they come up, because you have observed that might be a place where their contribution will happen. And you just keep trying without imposing on them. You have to let them know, I see you. I'm glad you're here. I'm happy to be in conversation with you whenever you're ready. I know an adolescent who went 3 years in our community without talking much and never giving a presentation or getting up in front of a group. When she left and went to a high school beyond us, she was fine. It was as though she needed all 3 years to consolidate what was happening inside her and heal. That's happened several times in my career. And being patient, but also not neglecting the relationship, right? Letting them know, when you're ready, would you like to? Can I offer you this opportunity? How can I help you? Which part of this work would you like me to do for you to succeed? It's the art of patient invitation and observing a lot, right? Observing. And never giving up.
好，那我们接下来进到下一题。下一题的部分是想要请问，在 AI 人工智慧大爆发的这一年，那蒙特梭利教育是如何看待教育上要怎么样因应？那是否需要在青少年的教育阶段提供更多关于 AI 方面的学习呢？
I don't think Montessori has any more answers than anyone else does about AI. It's new to all of us. We're going to need time to observe and think things through. I'm just going to say what I've been saying all along about technology. It's not the technology itself. that is evil. It's the consequences, it's the impact on human beings that we have to be aware of. So we just have to be careful, and we have to observe and consider what impacts are being experienced. I can give my personal opinions, but it's so new. No one has answers to this yet, right? In what way does technology become an obstacle for human beings to use their human capacities? I think that's a question that comes from being rooted in Montessori. If we value the unfolding of human capacity as an internal process that we're designed to develop through in stages of development, when does relying on technology become an obstacle to being human and developing those capacities?
好，我们感谢 Laurie 的回馈。那再来下一题的话呢，是想要请教讲者，请教讲者认为高中蒙特梭利家长选择蒙特梭利教育的动机为何？那可能是基于哪一些的价值观，或者是其他因素，像是经济考量，那会让他们的孩子进入蒙特梭利中学的环境里头。
I think it is about values. I think we always have to explain Montessori, right, to parents and be honest about what it is that Montessori supports. And I mean, I'm always saying to people, if you want a human being who's born with all this potential to have the opportunity to develop different potentials, this is an educational approach that does that. And you have to respect that it's going to look different than traditional education does. But in the end, what the outcomes are, adaptability as an outcome. How is adaptability not one of the most important aspects of moving forward on the planet right now? Being confident and independent in your thinking and in your processes, in the way you find information, in the way you operate in the world, being aware that you have to be a member of a human dynamic that's interdependent. Those are the outcomes. What does the world need? What do you really want your children to achieve while they're here? What kind of people do you want them to be? That's what we're asking in Montessori. It's hard to convince parents. Of course, they want their children to be happy. Success equals happiness in many of our cultures. The truth is, though, people are not happy for many reasons. Adopting the current cultural values. And one of the things we can do is help parents see that the science of happiness is very much about self I don't know what the word is, to be self-efficacy, all right, being in charge of your own decision making, in feeling you have purpose in the world. So if you really ask what state of mind, what state of being do you want your child to have by the time they become an adult? And you look at the outcomes of Montessori, you're looking at high functioning people in relationships, as a parent, high functioning in their jobs, high responsibility in their work, high moral awareness, and lifelong learning, adaptability.
好，感谢 Laurie 的回馈。那刚才我们有漏掉一题，这边来提问一下啊。刚才有一位老师是说，在跟青少年就青少年一起工作和合作的过程中，他们经常会起冲突。想请问，在学习者合作的过程之中，如果遭遇沟通不顺畅，甚至起争执的情况，该如何协助他们？那想要请 Laurie 可以分享一些相关的经验。
Well, the first thing we have to do is recognize that conflict is part of the growth process. In order to be a more effective social person, a more morally aware person, you can't avoid conflict. You have to have opportunities to work through it. There has to be space in your community to allow for processing that conflict. I think most of us, and in most educational settings, we don't want to work with the conflict. We want it to go away, deal with it outside of school, ignore it. I don't want to hear about it. It's not my problem. When the truth is that it's fundamental to our human nature to be in conflict at times, and allowing for that, respecting the feelings of people as real and valid, and then offering processes that guide the adolescent through a series of discussions, a series of reflections about their own thinking, about where they are emotionally right now, about what else is going on in their lives that might be impacting them. There are lots of sources, I think, out there for what we call in the United States restorative practices, guidelines or process to help people work through conflict and resolve and learn from those conflicts. And they need adults who are going to be patient, not judgmental, compassionate, but also offer guidance and opportunity to work through those conflicts. Look for online restorative practices, conflict resolution strategies. There are ways to set up processes that you can model and help them through.
那感谢 Laurie 的回馈。那因为时间的关系，我们现在呢会是最后一个问题。那根据刚才的提问里面，有一个看起来应该是家长的提问，他说想要请教讲者，若孩子不是在蒙特梭利的教育环境中成长，那家长可以做哪些事情来帮助孩子？
I think one of the things parents can do is become familiar with what is typical during this stage of life. So, any developmental psychology source that will give you the characteristics of this time, this stage, so you can be patient with what your adolescent is going through. And you can mirror back to them what you're seeing and what you're hearing from them. If they don't have access to that in a school, then having you as a parent be an understanding parent about the ups and downs, the emotional vulnerability that adolescents feel, that's a great gift to your child. I think the other thing parents can do is be good listeners. I think parents tend to be more tellers. They want to tell their adolescents what to do, what to think, how to feel, when really their adolescent child often needs to just be heard, be witnessed, for the parent to be able to say, I see you, I hear you, that's real for you, I understand. And not judge them for what they're experiencing. To be able to give your adolescent choices if you need them to accomplish tasks in your life, to give them time frames and choices. Of the six things that our family needs done this week, which of these would you like to take on? And when would you like to get them done? We are all empowered by being given respectful choices, and we can do that for adolescents. We can also learn how to use I statements with them in having conversation, to be able to say, I think this way. I know you might not agree. I own that I feel this way. I need this. I'm understanding this. Instead of using language that is you oriented, you must, you should, you don't. But treating that adolescent as you might another adult, by not imposing your beliefs and your needs on them, but owning your own perspective and respecting that they might have a different way of thinking. That goes a long way in developing a trusting relationship. That's true with students as well, right?
好，非常感谢 Laurie 今天带来精彩的演讲，以及针对刚才的很多的问题给予回馈。 那我们现在呢，是不是就来邀请一下郑同僚教授来帮我们今天的讲座做一个结尾？
Hello, Laurie。我用中文因为有翻译，非常开心今天又可以在这里见到 Laurie。那我因为带我的研究生到一个岛屿来做田野调查，早上急着要上网，但是因为网络上面这边有时候不太稳定，所以没办法。那所以我现在补偿大家的方式呢，就是让大家可以看到这个美丽的岛屿外面我们住的地方。每次
beautiful
每次我听 Laurie 的演讲都觉得非常的感动。今天特别开心是因为事隔1年，我觉得 Laurie 看起来比去年还年轻，看起来更好看。是不是这个学蒙特梭利就可以是一个很好的化妆品？真的看起来比去年更有精神。每次我都觉得听了 Laurie 的说法，让我们觉得这条路
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. I was surprised at the first look. 让我们觉得不孤单，然后让我们觉得更有力量。这个是 Laurie 每年都带给我们的。那之前 Laurie 也说，他将来很希望能够再来台湾跟大家见面。我想现在疫情也趋缓了啊，那我想借这个机会再次邀请，我们希望尽快能够请 Laurie 来这边跟大家见面，可以谈到更多。我想亲自的参与现场跟网络上听是不太一样的。就像我这次带我的学生来，虽然我们课堂上都讲了研究方法，讲了访谈，讲了观察，讲了怎么分析，但是实际上来到这边，大家不是只有在知识上面的学习，还有生活在一起，一起准备那个吃的，准备3餐，一起去聊天，然后一起整理大家一起住的民宿这个空间，完全能够感受到这种蒙特梭利中学社会生活它的一个重要的意义。因为就算我们这一群是大人了，大家还是非常非常的开心，你可以从每个人的表情上面看得到。所以我来这边虽然没有办法在一开始就听到 Laurie 的演讲，但是最后呢，我觉得就可以从我们现在这一群研究生的切身经验来跟大家做见证。当人觉得他是一个活生生的人，他不是只有功课，他有很多在现实社会上面他的自我价值，那这件事情会让每一个人的眼睛会发亮。非常开心Laurie 今天又告诉我们他自己在办学跟授课里面非常非常重要的经验，非常核心的经验。这些话我们简直是可以每一句都裱起来，终生奉行，然后你会觉得一路不孤单，很有力量。好，谢谢大家。我们台湾蒙特梭利教育基地会继续陪伴大家，在 Laurie 的指导下，大家一起为青少年、为这个人类的世界追寻更好的生活、和平的生活。谢谢，谢谢大家。